Alone in fog-shrouded woods, she finds herself hunted by an otherworldly entity that seems to glide through the mist. Whispers and footsteps draw closer no matter how fast she runs, as this faceless phantom toys sadistically with its chosen prey. Can she escape its sinister grasp before the shifting fog swallows her whole? Hit like and subscribe for this chilling tale. The fog rolled in just as twilight fell, blanketing the forest in an impenetrable haze. I quickened my pace, cursing myself for staying out so late. I just had to take that last hike to the waterfall despite the looming weather. Now I struggled to follow the winding trail back as darkness and mist descended around me. I first heard the footsteps when I stopped to get my bearings. Faint rustling came from somewhere in the gray void behind me. I spun around, squinting into the billowing fog. Nothing but empty air. Probably just an animal, I told myself. But unease skittered up my spine as I continued on. Minutes later, a snapping branch jolted me to a halt again. I stared wide-eyed into the shadows, trying desperately to pierce the gloom. All was silence and stillness save for the mist drifting through the trees. Shaking my head, I picked up my pace. It was just my mind playing tricks after being alone in the woods for so long. But when the whispers started, I couldn't ignore my growing dread. At first they were imperceptible, a faint murmuring I thought was the wind. But soon the voices arose clearly from the fog, garbled words just out of comprehension. They seemed to echo all around me in the haze, quiet yet pervasive. I ran now, gasping the damp air into my starving lungs. The trail dissolved before me, no longer discernible through the thickening fog. Still those whispers mocked me, their indecipherable words swirling through the mist. Blindly I pushed on through grasping branches and tangled underbrush. I just had to keep moving. When the footsteps resumed behind me, I forced myself not to look back. Looking would only slow me down, I reasoned. But they drew closer, clipping gracefully over the forest floor unlike my own clumsy footfalls. I could feel an ominous presence giving chase now, toying with me like a cat with a mouse. A root snagged my ankle then, sending me crashing to the muddy ground. I cried out as pain shot through my leg, it was surely twisted or broken. The footsteps paused as I dragged myself miserably against a nearby tree trunk. I was trapped here, alone and injured in the dark foggy woods. From out of the mist, a silhouette slowly materialized before me. I cowered back against the rough bark, watching the humanoid shadow take form. It was impossibly tall, limbs stretching unnaturally. Where its face should be, only a pale oval floated in the swirling fog. It leaned down toward me, and I shrank away from the space where its eyes should be. 1,000 whispers echoed from that blank space, both terrible and inhuman. Paralyzed by fear and pain, I could only stare at this entity that had risen from the fog to pursue me. A twig snapped sharply behind us, and the featureless head tilted slightly as if startled. I felt a rush of air as the shadow glided back and dissipated into the gloom. The whispers faded abruptly, leaving only deafening silence. I don't know how long I sat there shaking against the tree before a park ranger emerged out of the fog, drawn by the sound of my earlier cry. As he knelt to check my ankle, I glanced wildly around for any sign of the phantom. But the forest shrouded in mist appeared empty once again. Later, I would learn that others had encountered a similar entity in that area before, always appearing from and disappearing back into the dense fog that perpetually cloaks those woods. Some locals speak in hushed tones of ancient spirits that still roam the shadowed places untouched by time or man. Perhaps I had stumbled too far off the worn path that day, crossing unwittingly into a realm not meant for mortal eyes. In visible daylight, the forest is just a forest. But at night, the mist rolls in and brings with it watchers from beyond the veil. My ankle healed in time, but I have never ventured into those woods again. Sometimes on foggy nights I imagine I hear faint whispers outside my window, beckoning me back to the trail. But I know some doors are better left unopened, some paths best left untaken, especially on certain ominous nights when the weather itself becomes your enemy. For in the end, we can never hope to understand the unseen realms swirling all around us, so close and yet so far, interacting with our world in mysterious ways. There are presences lurking in the shadows that we are not equipped to behold. On that night, the mist had briefly parted to reveal one such entity that should never have been witnessed. Now when fog rolls in, heralding an uncanny stillness in the air, I stay inside with doors locked. But I can't help glancing warily out into the gloom, wondering if that tall shadow still roams the depths of the haze. Patiently searching. Silently pursuing. Waiting for its next unknowing victim to lead astray into the domain of the follower in the fog. I wish I could forget that night and chalk it up to overactive imagination. But deep down, I know what I encountered in the woods wasn't a delusion or hallucination. It was real, as tangible as you or I, yet not of this earthly realm. I had stumbled into its domain, and only that ranger's timely arrival allowed me to escape unscathed. I used to scoff at ghost stories and legends of haunted forests. But perspective changes when you've gazed directly into the abyss yourself, when you've heard the whispers of the unseen floating through the night. There are more mysteries in those fog-shrouded woods than I care to dwell on. Sometimes I still wake gasping from nightmares where I'm back on that misty trail, racing blindly through the trees and underbrush with panicking heart. Just as in real life, I always trip and fall. Only in the dream, there is no ranger to save me. There is only me, crippled helplessly on the cold ground. And the ominous footsteps drawing nearer through the gloom until the whispering shadow itself emerges. I jerk awake just before it reaches me, sheets soaked in sweat, pulse racing. But I know the true horror is not what the phantom might have done to me that night. It's the fact that now, I will always wonder if one day the mist will return. One day when I'm alone and wandering too far from the path. And from out of the gray darkness, I'll hear those familiar whispers start up once again, beckoning me back into the domain of the follower in the fog.